Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Many of us struggle with sales. This could be due to lacking confidence, comfort, just not wanting to be salesy. We want to help our customers. We know we can, but we complicate the process. This podcast is designed to help folks like you improve its sales through process, practice, framework, and thinking. I'm Mike Simmons, and I am here with Tanner Brock. As you know, Tanner is an account executive at Catalyst Sale, and we are going to continue this series that we started it's now been 2 episodes around Tanner's one, the announcement that Tanner joined the team, and then 2, how the onboarding process is going and where things are working and where things aren't working. So Tanner, welcome back.
Good to be on, Mike. I'm excited to be back on.
So what are you excited about?
I'm excited to, talk about what I've learned, where I've, fallen short, where I think I'm ahead. So I'm excited to hit on those different areas.
Cool. Well, I mean, a lot of folks know that the questions I ask tend to be around, especially when we're talking about leading teams, it's around the whole idea of start, stop, continue, which is basically, hey, what are we looking at that's not working? And if it's not working, let's stop it. What are we interested in testing? If we're interested in testing something, then we're going to go ahead and start it. And if things are working really well, then we're going to go ahead and continue those things. So let's focus on, well, where do you want to start? Do you want to start in the start, the stop, or the continue?
Well, let's start with the stop. Yeah, we'll start there.
All right. So what do we learn? What's not working?
I think one of a big takeaway that I've had, and it was through a phone call we had earlier in the week, and then a chat me and you had the other day. And I went back and started looking at accounts or people I'd reached out to, and I realized there was a little bit of spraying and praying happening in my approach, where I may have been squinting a little bit to fit people in that I was reaching out to, and that's it's difficult to look at that because you sit there and go, man, I'm a month and a half in, and why was I approaching it like that at the beginning? Why was there this rushed feeling already happening? So to be able to step back and say, why is it happening, and to be able to then go through and go back through this is what's cool about the frameworks is I'm able to go back and say, all right, let's look at our ideal customer profile through the territory planning. And then from there, what does a good discovery look like? And what does that outreach look like? And how can I make the adjustments? And so, just today alone, I was going back through and, reaching back out to people that I really feel were a good, strong fit. I feel like my reach out has become stronger. I went back today and read some of my first messages I sent to people, and it was hard not to laugh at myself. So from where I started to there to now, there's been growth, and I feel like I'm turning more into this real focus on people rather than just kind of spraying and praying and hoping someone will take it.
What could I have done differently to help accelerate that?
So that's a good question. I think it's I think it's played on both parts. It's me being more open to, hey, this is who I'm looking at and here's what I'm thinking. But then I also think, on another end, it, could be just going through and saying, hey, I noticed this account, just like we did the other day where he said, hey, I noticed you reached out to this account. Can you explain to me what you were thinking? And I think the way that you approached it too, with the finesse you approached it, it didn't seem like hey, what the heck are you doing here? It was, can you explain to me what you were seeing? So if I'm missing something, we can fix it from there. So I think on my end, it could have been more open and just saying, hey, I feel overwhelmed that I'm not getting any response. What am I doing wrong? But obviously, we all have these egos we want to keep up, and sometimes it's hard to raise our hand and say I'm struggling. And I think on other times it's, with everything going on, you get busy and it's hard to always go back and do, the film review with people.
So, I mean, one of the things we've talked about from the beginning is we have an ideal customer profile. We have this group that kind of fits in, and we're open to testing outside of that group.
Yeah.
In that specific instance, it was pretty quick for me to be able to go to their website and figure, these guys really aren't our ideal customer. And so as we went through kind of the process, nothing in the process has changed. Right. It's execution associated with the process. So I think the thing that's really important to highlight here is we may know what we should do. We may hear what we should do, but that does not necessarily translate into doing those things
Yeah.
out on the field or in the field. Whether it's out on the field, on a football field, or in the field working as a sales rep, you start to fall into the habit of activity is progress.
Yeah.
Activity is better than no activity. We do not measure. Still go back to the same view that we looked at when you've asked before, how do I know if I'm doing well or if I'm not doing well? It's the T. You're either
Yep.
on the in the L column or you're in the profit column. And if you're in the L column, then there's things we got to do better. If we're in the profit column, then hey, let's see how we can optimize those things where we're winning. But I think the clearer piece is it's not enough to just say these things and do these things. I mean, what Tanner shared is he puts this stuff into practice. He puts it into practice in the way that he builds out his podcast. He puts it into practice in the way that he engages with others. Yet in this instance, we didn't go through the basics, which are before I start going through the motions and just throwing the ball, how do I go through and look and say, did the person who filled out this form, did they fill it out with genuine intent? Did they fill it out because they may want to gather something else? Did they fill it out because of whatever else? Do they align with whomever? And everybody, just to kind of give the specific scenario, these are in the instances that Tanner and I are talking about. It's a lead that was generated from a webinar that I had participated in, where the contact was listed as someone who would be in our ideal customer profile, or somebody who we would target. And this is a common thing that happens across sales teams that are out there. You get a lead list from marketing, you go in and you just start reaching out to these folks, and then the outreach is generic. As much as it feels like it's not generic, it is absolutely generic. I mean, it's the same stuff. It's, hey, I noticed that you said this, this, and this. If we take one more step and we go in and we just look at their website, if we just look at the people, who the person is, we just look at kind of what their background is, we can gather just a little bit more information, and then we can deliver the information in context or determine that it's not worth delivering the information. So agreed. That's a awesome one for us to stop on, or at least take a pause on before taking action. And it's something I should have caught early on. And one of the ways that we're catching this stuff is Tanner's keeping track of all of his information in HubSpot. So it's easy for me to asynchronously go through HubSpot and take a look at the communication, take a look at what's being sent out, look at the people that it's being sent to, so that I can provide some coaching on the other side. What else might we stop, or what else isn't working?
I think on my end, and we've talked about it before. The first time you and I actually met in person, we talked about playing loose. And I feel like a lot of times as much as I want to play loose, I just automatically go into this playing tight of, I'm going to hit X amount of people a day. I think the one thing I'm going to stop doing is creating unrealistic plans for the day, right? Well, I'm going to hit 15 or 20 people. Well, then all of a sudden, do they transfer from people to numbers? Have I lost the whole focus? Because when I look at the frameworks and the tools and, the method, one of the words that comes to mind for me with Catalyst is empathy, and seeing people and understanding where they're coming from. Yes, we're trying to sell something, but what we're selling is generally going to help them. So if I turn them into a number, am I really trying to help a person, or is it just a number? So that's another approach and tactic that I need to stop on my end is, keeping them as people first, and then the numbers will follow from there.
Yeah. And it's just key it's important to reinforce that point. It is, and we have talked about in the context of going to the gym. You can go to the gym and you can, on your GPS, you can say, I checked into the gym 365 days out of the last 365 days. I went every day this year. It does not tell me anything about whether or not you were able to raise your heart rate, whether or not you increased your lifts, whether or not you moved stuff around. So it's one thing to go through the motions. It's another thing to actually go out there and do the work. And I think we do this. And there are folks as you're going through this and listening, and I'm sure someone's out there saying, wow, dude, it sounds like Simmons is lecturing Tanner on this stuff. This is not it. This is about looking at it and saying, hey, where can we improve? And one of the ways we can improve is stop doing activities that align with vanity metrics like number of people you outreach to and number of people you contact or number of emails that you send. Be more focused on who are you sending information to. And it doesn't need to be a long drawn out process. You identify, let's say we're going to start with one company. We identify one company. We identify the three people inside that company who we think we can serve, who could potentially care about the problem we solve for. We see if we can find out something personal about those people, something that they shared, something that will create context for our outreach, so that when we engage with them, we're not like every other person who's out there sending, well, spraying and praying like Tanner started with. I mean, we did a bunch of outreach, and it was funny because I know Tanner did all the outreach. He did all the outreach and nothing happened. Like there wasn't a response. And then the follow-up question I had was, well, what'd you send as a second email? Well, and so and at that point in time, we hadn't done that. So now it sounds like one of the things that we're starting, related to testing. And there's going to be a lot of people who'll be like, dude, you don't have to test this. This is actually what you have to do. Like outreach is out there saying that you have to connect with people 9.2 times in order to get it in order to do something, or 14.x times. These are services that sell the ability to send sequences out to folks and automate these processes. So we all know that we've got to engage with people multiple times. They're not likely going to open the first email. Even if they do open the first email, they may or may not trust you or feel like you're actually going to be able to solve the problem, or they even have an understanding or care about solving the problem inside. So what are some of the things that we're going to test relative to follow-up communication within the organizations you've already outreached to?
Yeah, so on the topic of the sequencing of following up, so what I have done is I've started to create a combination of sequences, but not the same one applied to everybody. When I go to a company and if they're in that startup stage and they're trying to grow, I look at the territory planning and I say that's a really useful tool. As I'm growing my own side company, being able to identify an ideal customer, that's a huge first step, because if you can't identify who you're selling to, you can't sell anything. Business doesn't work. So I can start there. If it's a company that's more established, it's getting more specific. You and I have talked, Mike. There's a person who's actually in a training role, and they have to change legacy training and go more virtual and update all their training. Well, how can they update all their training and know what's needed if they don't know how to do good discovery? And so my approach with them was, well, we'll start with discovery, and then somehow we got to territory planning of, well, this could help you create standards for your training after you've got the discovery of what's needed. So the sequencing has really been personalized to the people. So as I'm doing it, it's generally about, every 3 to 5 days, I'll have that outreach of, you know, I sent you this. Did you have time to check it out? Try and add more value each time I reach out. Because I think that's one of the big things I've noticed is as I've grown on LinkedIn, or as my podcast has grown, is when people reach out to me, and you can just know right away that they're just connecting to sell you something. There's no value given for free right away. There's just nothing. It's just, hey, if you want me to help you, just let me know. Where I think our approach is different in, hey, we see what you're doing. Here's something that you might find valuable that you could put it into work right away. I think that's huge.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with selling things. I mean,
Right.
let's just be really clear. If you're out there and you have the ability to transfer some kind of value, meaning you help someone solve a problem that they're struggling with, and you either help them solve that problem faster, so speed, better, improvement, higher level of predictability. Um, these are valuable things that you can deliver into an organization, and you should be fairly compensated for that. There's nothing wrong with selling stuff. It's when you're disingenuous
Yeah.
and you reach out to somebody and say, hey, I connected with you because I think that you've got an impressive profile, and our networks could be mutually beneficial. And then the follow-up is, hey, when can we schedule some time so I can pick your brain about this? Or the ones I get often are, let me I want to work with you so that I can help you with sales and help you improve your sales process or those kind of things. And you kind of say, did you even look at the website? Do you know what we do? Have you listened to any of the content that's shared? So it's, don't get us wrong. Like, it's not bad to sell. What it is it's bad to be disingenuous. It's bad to just spray and pray, like Tanner was talking about, where you just put out this huge net and play the volume game of hoping if I cast a really wide net, I'm going to pull in the right folks. And what we talked about is, be a sniper, not a machine gunner. And it is the instance that Tanner and I talked about here, which is, just as we move into this continue. So there's the stop piece about the spray and pray. There's the continue about the follow up engagement. If you've only got um, 10 bullets to shoot, or 10 arrows to shoot, or 10 throws to make, or 10 chips to play, or 10 whatever they are, is it worth playing that chip or that bullet or that arrow in the instance that you're looking at right now? And if you ask yourself that question and it's not, then don't waste it. Don't waste the time. Don't waste the energy. Don't make it be the one of the 10, because all of us have limited time and we can be much more effective if we take the time to, like Tanner was just talking about, be empathetic to our customers, understand where they are, what problems they run into. The problems that we see in the marketplace are things like this. One, deals are stalling, or deals just stall. They're, for whatever reason, we put things in a pipeline and then they don't actually move to close, or they keep moving out to the right. That's one challenge that's out there. Another challenge is pipeline development. Like, we just don't have enough stuff in the pipeline. Another challenge is we're just going after, we have a hard time articulating what we do or how we do it inside the organization. There's a lack of alignment. Another challenge is confidence that we're actually doing the right thing, that we're not missing on something. If you are unable to forecast in your business, it's really hard for you to run your business. It's hard for you to determine, when do I need to hire more people? When do I need to improve my capabilities to support it? So, okay. So we talked about things we're going to stop. We talked about, some things that we're going to continue. Um, what are some things that we're going to start?
I think for me, one of the things I want to start, and it's something that I struggle with, not just with this in particular, just in general, is, the ability just to celebrate the little wins. I have a tendency to set extremely high expectations, and then if I even, get close to it, I still don't think that's good enough because I didn't meet it. I remember it was like 2.5 weeks ago, I messaged you and said, "Hey, 2 weeks, I'm going to have my first sale. I'm just going to have it." And I was like, "Yeah, that's realistic." And then it didn't happen. But what we're at is, next week we have a call with someone who's interested. And then there's another individual who's, got a lot of interest in it. And, today I just thought about that. I was like, maybe you don't have that cell. Maybe we haven't moved from that one side of the T chart, the T chart yet, but man, you're close to it. Right. And if you're playing like it didn't work out, if you're thinking that way, well, then when it doesn't, you'll just be like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't supposed to work out anyways." But if you go into a positive, you have higher energy, you're more effective, you're more useful for people. So I think for me, it's really starting to focus on and celebrating, even if they're little wins, celebrating those, because I think that's the motivation and momentum that keeps us going.
Yeah. Well, and there are different sales roles that are out there that are much more transactional. And if they're high transaction, then it's really easy to celebrate those quick wins, because you see the conversions happen immediately, and they just happen over and over and over again. And pretty quickly, what do I need to turn up? Where do I need to add some fuel? If I add fuel to this, or if I do some things differently here, I can increase sales. And that happens in B2C and transactional sales, transactional B2B sales. You can see that when you run into a situation where there's a fair amount of deliberation that needs to be made, there's a longer journey that organizations have to go through. It's really important to establish specific gates that you're going to walk through, and then celebrate each time that you go through those gates. So We celebrate a response. Awesome. Knock that off. Then we celebrate a conversation. We actually have a meeting. We knock that off. Then we celebrate a commitment that the organization makes to go through internal approval process. We knock that off. Then we celebrate the actual contract being won. So there's all of these, there's these incremental points, these next steps that we execute against that can help us see success over and over and over again. I mean, imagine if you were a football fan who measured success by every win that you got, and that was the only way that you looked at success with the wins. And that's ultimately how teams are measured. And in sales, we're measured by the money that we generate for the business, the amount of revenue that we bring into the organization. But if you measured based on, let's say you measure based on winning a Super Bowl. If you measure based on winning a Super Bowl, how many teams are really going to win a Super Bowl? And what's the process that they've got to go through in order to do that? It's one day at a time, one game at a time, 1 week at a time, and just work through that. Now, when you get into the game, it's one play at a time. If I'm thinking about the play that's going to happen in the fourth quarter while I'm playing in the first quarter, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble because I'm not present. I'm not focused. And I've talked about this in the context of golf. I'm swinging and hitting a golf ball. If I'm thinking about the next two shots, I'm going to have a hard time. Same thing happens in the sales process and in anything that we're executing on. If we're not thinking about how we're driving a car, and we're thinking about 6 steps down, we're going to get ourselves into a situation where we're distracted. So it is very important to celebrate those quick wins and make sure that those quick wins are leading to success. Because if it's a quick win that doesn't lead to success, then I ask the question, does it really count?
Yeah, and I think it's a vital question to ask is, what quantifies a win? And, I think that's for a lot of people, that's where it falls for me as a challenge too. And the thought I kind of had, as I've been going through all this stuff in my mind, I don't know how many people are Patriots fans. And if you are, good for you. If you're not, that's okay. You're forgiven. But I grew up in a house where my dad lived in Boston for a while. And so any Boston team was the team. I never admitted to in public because people just get mad at you for being a Patriots fan. But I remember, and I still go back to it all the time, the Super Bowl, Patriots, Falcons, and they're down 28-3. And I just remember this feeling of, it's Tom Brady. He's going to pull something off. He has to. And of course they do, right? And, we're a month and a half into this experiment, this test. And there's a couple of days where I just felt like, man, I am down 28-3. And then all of a sudden we had someone commit to the call, and I'm like, all right, there's one touchdown, but that's not good enough. We still have more to do. We have more to go, which led to another phone call with someone else. So you're right that they've got to be things that are leading you to the next, attempt or touchdown. This is still a sales podcast, not a football podcast. So, but it's getting to the next stage and the next step to, win.
And you got to be deliberate. So when you design, when you go through the process, and we've talked about it, designing backwards, executing forward. When you begin with the end in mind, you design based on those things that you want to execute against, then you've got to measure yourself. Are we actually doing those things? And is the work that we're doing actually making that impact? So a couple of things shared today, both the one around, hey, make sure you're doing the basics. Let's go in and make sure that we're actually targeting and reaching out to people who are inside our ideal customer profile, not those that someone said were inside our ideal customer profile. Make sure we're doing the first couple of steps in gathering information, not just sending an email out to someone because someone said this is the structure you need to use. Make sure it is the right thing to be sending to someone, that there's context. Do that extra bit of work, because people around this entire industry are not doing that work, and you see it in the crap that you get in LinkedIn. The other thing that we talked about is the importance of the follow-up and engaging and realizing that just because you send out one email. It doesn't mean that you sit back and wait for the rest of it to happen. You've got to continue to engage, and you've got to go through the process. And that's that design and making sure that we're actually executing against those pieces. So yeah, so we've done a lot of really cool things. Each of the successes that we have open up another gate for us to have a conversation around. And one of the things I've realized as you go through this is you can tell people, hey, this is what it's going to look like. They don't see it and they miss a lot of those things until they get a chance to actually feel it and experience it. So, Tanner ran his first call on his own and came back out of it with a couple of things. And there was some feedback from someone around, hey, we see the value, but not sure we can justify the cost. Kind of view, and you come up with different ways to navigate that and ask questions and gather information. So, Tanner, thanks for sharing with everybody how you've been going through the process. If anybody has questions for me or for Tanner as we're going through this, send them to @CatalystSale on Twitter, or if you go to catalystsale.com, you can go directly into the live chat. Sales is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about yours? Thank you.